It's 11 p.m. Your Unit 2 test is tomorrow. Your notes look like a crime scene. Deep breath, I've got you. This video covers everything from Jamestown to the eve of the French and Indian War. European empires, colonial regions, slavery, trade, and the tensions that set the whole thing on fire in Unit 3. If you need comparison, causation, and contextualization for your exam, park yourself right here and let's go. 4 European powers built empires in the Americas: Spain, France, the Dutch, and Britain. Same continent, wildly different vibes. Why? Because each power showed up with a completely different game plan. Spain grabbed. Spain wanted wealth, first gold and silver, then cash crops like sugar and tobacco. And they were not polite about it. They imposed the encomienda system, which was basically, you live here now? Cool. You work for us. When word got back to Spain that encomenderos were brutalizing their workforce and getting a little too powerful for the king's comfort, the hacienda system replaced it. Still coerced labor, but now tied to agriculture and land ownership. Think of it as oppression with a software update. Spain also pushed Christianity hard through missions, churches at the center of organized settlements, which doubled as tools for social and economic control. And they ranked everyone through the casta system, a racial hierarchy where the closer you were to pure Spanish blood, the more power you had. Lovely stuff. Not everyone played along. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680 is your go-to example. The Spanish tried to crush Pueblo religious traditions, executed several medicine men, and the Pueblo said, and I'm paraphrasing, absolutely not. They killed hundreds of Spaniards, burned every church in the region, and reclaimed their customs. Spain came back 12 years later, but this time, they accommodated. Land grants, a Pueblo representative, and priests who suddenly discovered the concept of tolerance. Compared to Spain, the French and Dutch sent barely anyone, mostly men, mostly traders. The French built their whole operation around the beaver fur trade, allying and intermarrying with indigenous groups. The Dutch set up New Amsterdam as a diverse trading port where you could reportedly hear a dozen languages on the street. Neither felt the need to convert anyone at sword point. The contrast writes itself. Spain imposed control. France and the Dutch chose cooperation. Britain shoved. Way more people crossed the Atlantic from Britain than any other power, and they came for 4 reasons. Memorize these. They show up on every test. Social mobility. Primogeniture laws gave all the family land to the eldest son. Younger brothers, good luck. So they looked west. Economic prosperity. Jamestown, 1607. Single men showed up hunting for gold. Spoiler, they found very little gold and a lot of starvation. Tobacco eventually saved them. Religious freedom. Puritans and separatists fled persecution under the Church of England. The separatists, the Pilgrims, thought the church was beyond saving. Improved living conditions. Population growth. Plus, the enclosure movement meant the lower classes were getting squeezed off the land back home. The big difference, British colonists didn't come to trade with indigenous peoples or convert them. They came to build a completely separate English society and wanted everyone else out of the way. All right, forget the other empires. From here on out, it's all British, all the time. By 1754, 13 colonies lined the eastern coast, and they split into 4 regions that looked nothing alike. Comparison pants on. Let's go. New England. The church kids. Pilgrims landed at Plymouth in 1620. Puritans at Massachusetts Bay in 1630. These folks came as families to build a godly society. Governance was surprisingly democratic. Town hall meetings, the Mayflower Compact, majority rule. But the soil was rocky. Winters were brutal, so large-scale farming was out. Instead, they exported fur, timber, and fish. Keyword, community. Middle colonies, the melting pot. New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania. Tons of different ethnicities, tons of different religions, and genuine tolerance. William Penn, a Quaker who'd been persecuted in England, founded Pennsylvania as a refuge for anyone who wanted to worship freely. Compare that to the Puritans, who were tolerant of exactly one belief system, theirs. Fertile soil and excellent ports made grain the export engine. Keyword, pluralism, Chesapeake and North Carolina. The money chasers. Jamestown wasn't families building a society. It was single men hunting gold. When gold didn't pan out, tobacco became king, and the region reorganized itself around massive plantations. Labor started with indentured servitude, then shifted to African slavery after 1619. The Virginia House of Burgesses gave landowners a taste of representative government. Keyword, tobacco. Southern colonies and British West Indies, slavery on overdrive. Sugar plantations in the West Indies demanded enormous enslaved workforces. The black population outnumbered whites 4-1. The Barbados Slave Code stripped every right from enslaved people. South Carolina imported this model wholesale, swapping sugar for rice and indigo. A handful of elite planners ran everything. Keyword, hierarchy. Quick exam hack. If you're writing an LEQ or SAQ comparing regions, use this one-liner. New England was built on religion, the Middle Colonies on tolerance, the Chesapeake on tobacco profit, and the South on plantation slavery. The colonies were making money, and they were plugged into a global system to do it. Here's how the triangular trade worked. New England shipped rum to West Africa. Rum was traded for enslaved Africans. Enslaved people were transported via the Middle Passage to the West Indies. Sugar and molasses went back to New England to be distilled into, you guessed it, more rum. Round and round and round. Profitable for merchants. A nightmare for the people trapped inside it. Meanwhile, trade with indigenous groups continued. European metal tools and firearms reshaped native economies, and European diseases like smallpox devastated native populations. Now here's the concept that ties trade to politics: mercantilism. Britain measured wealth in gold and silver, so the goal was simple: export as much as possible, import as little as possible. Under mercantilism, colonies existed to serve the mother country. You supply raw materials, you buy our manufactured goods, and you don't ask questions. To enforce this, Britain passed the Navigation Acts, locking colonial trade to Britain alone. Colonists hated it. But here's the twist. Britain was busy fighting wars with France and couldn't enforce these laws consistently. That's salutary neglect, and the colonists got very comfortable ignoring British rules. File that away. When Britain stops neglecting, things get ugly fast. Slavery existed in every British colony, but the further south you go, the more intense it gets. And the shift from indentured servitude to full-blown chattel slavery, that accelerated after one very messy event: Bacon's Rebellion, 1676. Here's the story. Former indentured servants in Virginia finished their contracts and were promised land. What they actually got was garbage frontier plots, some of it already claimed by indigenous groups. When Governor Berkeley revoked their voting rights on top of that, a guy named Nathaniel Bacon lost it. He led an armed uprising, first against Native American settlements, then against the governor himself. Berkeley ran. Bacon got sick and died. The militia crushed what was left. Small rebellion, massive consequence. Wealthy planters watched this and thought, indentured servants who finish their contracts and want rights? That's a problem. You know who can't demand rights? Enslaved Africans. And the shift to chattel slavery kicked into high gear. Chattel slavery meant people were legally property, like a plow or a horse. New laws locked the system in. Children of enslaved women were automatically enslaved. Interracial marriage was banned, and slave codes tightened everywhere south of Pennsylvania. But, and this is critical, enslaved people never simply accepted this. Covert resistance was constant, maintaining family structures in secret, working slowly, breaking tools, preserving African cultural traditions like music and spiritual practices. Overt resistance erupted too. The Stono Rebellion of 1739 saw enslaved people in South Carolina launch an armed attack on white settlements, killing colonists and torching property. The militia crushed it, and South Carolina responded by making slave codes even more brutal. Exam reminder: Bacon's Rebellion leads to shift to chattel slavery. Stono Rebellion leads to harsher slave codes. Cause and effect. That's an AP skill they test every single year. 13 colonies, dozens of ethnicities, multiple religions. So what pulled these people together? Two big movements. The Great Awakening hit in the 1730s. Preachers like Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield didn't deliver polite sermons. They delivered emotional firestorms. People fainted. People wept. People converted on the spot. And here's why it matters for your exam. It was the first mass movement that connected colonists across every region, and it told them their individual spiritual experience mattered more than what any institution said. That's a democratic idea, even if nobody called it that yet. The Enlightenment hit differently, through books, not sermons. Thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau spread ideas about natural rights and the social contract through a growing transatlantic print culture. Educated colonists absorbed these ideas and started thinking, if government gets its power from the people, then maybe the people can take it back. Both movements empowered the individual. Both taught colonists to question authority. Remember that. It's the fuse for Unit 3. Meanwhile, three tensions were building. 1. Territory. Colonists wanted to push west into the Ohio River Valley. Britain blocked them, fearing wars with indigenous groups in France. Colonists were furious. Westward expansion was the whole reason they crossed the ocean. 2. Self-rule. After decades of salutary neglect, colonists had grown used to making their own decisions. When Britain tried to reassert control, especially through impressment, literally kidnapping Americans into the Royal Navy, colonists pushed back hard. The 1747 Boston impressment riots proved they believed in their own natural rights. 3. Trade. The colonial population was booming, and they needed new markets. The Navigation Act said no. So colonists smuggled. When Britain cracked down, resentment exploded. That's Unit 2, 4 empires, 4 colonial regions, the triangular trade, the rise of chattel slavery, and 3 tensions that are about to blow the lid off in Unit 3. If you watch this at 11 p.m. the night before your test, you're now dangerous. You've got the framework to handle any question they throw at you. Hit subscribe. Unit 3 is where the colonies stop complaining and start fighting.